do you think Rebecca Long-Bailey was right that Jeremy Corbyn should be given 10 out of 10?
Supposing you just guess the answer to that rather than me giving it. Okay.
Just explain why you might think she's wrong.
Well, they're not, you know, for the British people, they have never voted for that type of far-left politics. And for the people in constituencies like mine, patriotism is like number one thing, right? Or it's not necessarily number one, no, that's not the right way of putting it. It's preconditional, right? You may decide you'll vote on the basis of the health service, but if you've got any doubts about patriotism, and that is, just forget it. And I'm afraid people just had a lot of doubts.
So the manifesto, the Corbyn supporters would say the policies were very popular, you know, people liked them, they polled well.
Yeah.
What went wrong there?
Well, it'd be odd if they really liked them if we lost. I've never quite got this one, actually, which is they really liked our policies, they really wanted them, they really hated the Tory policies, and I don't know, they just voted Tory. No, they did not like the policies. Individual policies, you see, there's a thing about individual policies and polling. It's why I always used to say to people, and I learned this through the 1980s and 90s, which is the fallacy of polling individual policies and thinking you're learning something. Because when you're polling an individual policy, first of all, you're separating it from the whole, and in the end, it's the whole thing that people vote on. So you can take individual policies, and each one of them might be popular, but you put them all together and it's not popular. Okay. But secondly, when you poll individual policies, it's what I call the difference between a 3-second conversation, a 30-second conversation, and a 3-minute conversation. Right, so railway renationalization, 3-second conversation, yeah, no, it should be in public ownership. 30-second conversation, you're going to spend a lot of time on renationalizing the railways, and it could cost quite a lot of money, and you've got all things to do with pension funds and so on. 30-second conversation, yeah, no, well, maybe. 3-minute conversation, here are the big challenges in transport going forward. You're going to have driverless vehicles, electric cars, you're going to have to reimagine the entire infrastructure of the country, and you guys are going to be spending all your time on railway renationalization. 3-minute conversation, I think that's a very good idea, actually. You poll individual policies, it doesn't, you know, you go back to the 1980s, by the way, all Labour's policies, apart from unilateral nuclear disarmament, were popular. I remember, this is why I sat and studied this during the 1980s, because I couldn't work it out at first. I was reading these polls saying privatization was really unpopular, trade union law was really unpopular, tax cuts at the top end were really unpopular, so how come Margaret Thatcher kept winning by a landslide? I spent a lot of time puzzling this, and these are the two conclusions I came to. In the end, it's about the whole thing, and it's a fallacy to think that individual policies can be polled and separated in that way. And so I think most people, look, they said what they said. I mean, it's clear. And by the way, virtually every single person who's done independent reviews of what happened in the election has said the same thing. People thought the manifesto was incredible. And if it's incredible, it's not a good idea. Because, you know, especially if you're living a really tough life and someone promises you the earth, it's not a credible thing. And so the manifesto wasn't, well, A, it wasn't popular, and B, it was wrong. I mean, the most important thing is that it was wrong. You know, this is why I made this point about the technology revolution. The challenge for progressive politics today is to recognize the sheer scope and scale and speed of that revolution. It's going to change everything. And it's going to mean, as I say, a huge re-engineering. If you want to take green politics seriously, you're going to have to reimagine the economy. Right? Now, the people who will be trusted to do that are people who, one, understand the future, understand what's going to happen, and two, are prepared to help you through it, but in a forward and modern-oriented way. They're never going to trust people who believe in sort of old-style collectivism to help them through that. So that's, you know, if I was back in frontline politics today, the first thing I would do is just get us to rethink policy from first principles. What are the huge changes that are going to happen in our country and in other modern developed countries in the next few years? The left always wins when people think they need a government on their side helping them, right? So how is that government going to be constituted? How are you going to manage to make sure that industry prepares for digitalization, that your healthcare system gets reformed, education system, law and order, as a result of technological change? How is that going to happen? Who are the types of people you need to form alliances with in order to get those answers right? And that's where the future is going to be decided. So this is, the problem with the manifesto is that it wasn't popular, but it also just wasn't, so you have a debate about the health service in this country today, which the Labour Party should just get way above it. The debate is basically, the Tories say, we're under lots of pressure on health. By the way, this is what they always say. We're under lots of pressure on health, we'll throw some more money at it. Labour says, however much money you spend on the health service, whatever it is, we're going to double it. That's the debate. You could have had that debate in the 1980s, and we just had it in 2019. What we've got to be saying is, let's reimagine the health service today with all the changes that are necessary. Now, if we do that, then when we're saying we're going to invest in the healthcare system, people say, yeah, but these guys know that we've got to do this differently. That's why, one of the things that we did do when I was in government, by the time I left office, health service satisfaction was at its highest rating since the health service began, because we were prepared not just to invest, but to make changes. One of the other problems in that manifesto, I actually read it, by the way, I don't know how many people did, but I read it. It's 97 pages, I think it was. And the more you read it, the less convinced you became. It was an incredible document, because on every page, you could see someone had come and knocked on the door and said, hey, here's a 10-point plan on this, and I want £1 billion. Yeah, okay, let's put that in there. And then the next page, another 10-point plan, another £1 billion. So what people worry about, they want to know that if they're, and they want to know this far more than they do about the Tory party, because as I say, they understand the Tory party's purpose is to govern, the Labour Party's the cause. So what they want to know about a Labour Party leader is that at the end, he or she is in charge. Right, they're in charge, and yes, pressure groups will be listened to, yes, trade unions will be listened to, but they're in charge. Because otherwise what they fear is precisely what that manifesto ended up with. So everybody who shouts or disrupts or throws something, yeah, okay, we'll give it to you as well. I mean, people
So being in charge means saying no?
Yeah, look, the test, any politician can say yes, it's pretty easy. It's when you say no, particularly to your own people. But I may be wrong on this, but I think with progressive politics particularly, the public wants to know that whoever is the leader, that person is prepared to say no to their own folk. Because they know it's a cause, and therefore because they always worry that you're going to be, playing to your activist base. This I think is going to become, by the way, a huge problem for the Democrats in the US, but it's another sad story.
What do you think should happen there?